Looks like
All
you're
right.
ready.
Hopefully, folks can hear us okay.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There we are. It's working on two of them. We're still waiting for Facebook to go live.
Ah, okay.
All right. Yeah. I can hear it. Can you hear yourself?
A little bit. Yep.
Oh, you're on the this is our first time, guys. So if you're here with us and you're like, what the heck? I'm like, I'm still not sure how to do this. I literally figured it out this afternoon, but we're gonna go ahead and start and we'll go from there. So I have Gloriana. She's a really good friend of mine. We've known each other for what, like 3 years now?
Yes.
And
Hmm.
so I'm really excited to have you on the program today. And we are talking about when helping hurts. And so a little bit of background about Glory. She has been in the nonprofit space for, we'll say 2 years because she's only 22, right?
That
No, I'm just
would be
playing.
nice.
It's been a little while, but she's been in the nonprofit space for a while and really loves Jesus and at the same time loves to take care of people that need a hand up, not a hand out. And she is very passionate about matching people with organizations that are doing great things in our city, which is Phoenix, even though you might be somewhere else. And she's working on a project to help other nonprofits and churches meet with each other. And so, yeah, we're gonna get the conversation rolling today about when helping hurts. This is a topic that I believe that churches and Christians like to ignore. That there's
Hmm.
this piece of us that, although we love Jesus and we love to help people, we often help the wrong way. And when it does, it actually causes more problems than helps. And you want to kind of go into what your experience has been when it comes to helping other people and when that actually has been a net negative for their help.
Sure. So there's one particular example that I can share with you all, and it's one that I think is probably pretty common in a lot of metro areas. Here in Phoenix, we have a campus that's called the Human Services Campus. And on that campus, there is a really large shelter for about 500 people. And it's called the Central Arizona Shelter Services. So it's nicknamed CAS. And at CAS, there are people who are outside of the campus or the area that has all of these nonprofit buildings that have joined together and said, we are going to address homelessness together. So if somebody needs ID cards, if somebody needs healthcare services, if somebody needs shelter, we're going to have all of that in one space. But there's a gate there, and then there's people who are outside of the gate, people who will have tents and just be there throughout the day. So people essentially who are just camping out. And when you drive past this area, it's very easy to have the thought or the assumption of like, oh my goodness, there's all of these homeless people and they need help and they need food, and I just want to help them, and so I'm going to come in and save the day. So there are people who will go to Burger King or McDonald's and buy massive amounts of food, pizza, what have you, and they'll come to the shelter, especially during times of like the holiday season, where it's like, oh my goodness, we want to come and provide a holiday meal. These people with amazing hearts and good intentions, and they'll come and they'll feed all of these folks. And that's been one that I haven't been a part of this particular piece, but I've done things like this in the past and thought, oh, well, that's just such a great idea. Like people just need food and they just need help. When I was working for Crisis Response Network for the homeless management information systems, which is like the data side of the homelessness system here in the Phoenix area, I was able to go to a conference. And at that conference, there were people who work at the Human Services campus. And they explained very articulately that there are people who do this that have all of these big hearts and they want to help folks. But what they don't realize is that when they do that and when they feed these people, that there is a cafeteria that's actually there on site, run through St. Vincent de Paul, where they can get food 3 times a day. And when they go to the campus and they go to get food at this cafeteria, then they're connected with case management services. They're connected with folks who know how the system works in order to get them into housing, who are going to help them get IDs, who are going to help them create resumes and find jobs and go through all of the necessary steps in order to get into housing. And that by feeding them, there's trash that's left over that's almost never picked up. And they don't even realize that they have inadvertently taken these people away from a resource that actually is designed to help them. So I think that there could be so many examples like that where we want to help people and we have these amazing hearts of like, oh my goodness, this person just just needs our help, needs someone to come in, and hearts of compassion and coming from a really good place, but then not thinking through things, or maybe not even that, but not taking the time to investigate or to find out what nonprofits in the area are already doing that work in order to partner with them. So uh, that's been one way and one example that I've seen that I could share.
Yeah, so often in the church, we talk about reaching out to our city and making it a better place, but I think maybe our ego might get in the way.
Hmm.
We really want to help people, and we want to make ourselves feel good about helping people, and when we do, we often help the wrong things. Why do you believe we go for the surface level needs rather than the actual root cause needs?
Oh goodness, that is a very good question.
I'm doing my
Uh,
job.
um, I think that there's probably two pieces to that, in that we don't, part of us, I think, at a subconscious level, doesn't want to take the time to find out what the root cause or issue is, because that requires a lot more time and effort and probably expertise than we really have the ability to give. And so there's a piece of, I don't want to volunteer myself for something that I don't know what to
Mhm.
do with in
Yeah.
the end. So at an individual level, I can definitely see that people want to help, but then there's a like, I don't really know. I'm going to get myself into a really big mess if these people have a whole lot of issues that I don't know how to deal with.
Right.
Um, but then the second that uh, if they don't know how to help, and then the other that there's just the piece of that's going to take a lot of my time. That's going to be a really could be a long term effort.
Yeah, yeah. So, why do you believe that that we as Christians um have a hard time working at meeting the needs of people that are that really need our help? What is it that keeps us? You I asked the questioner earlier about surface level needs, but there's these root cause needs that it seems so often that we just have a hard time serving them in those areas. Is it organizationally? Is our organizations not designed in a way that can help that, or what do you think that cause is from an organizational level, not just an individual one?
At an organizational level, I think it gets quite a bit more complicated,
Hmm.
but definitely from the aspect of trying to go through the thought process and the planning that goes into figuring out what are the things that we can do, that we can help with, and then what partners do we need, and then what resources can we refer out to other organizations for things that we can't partner or that we can't provide for. But again, like trying to get into what the root causes and the root issues are, even at an individual level and an organizational level, I think that something that may not occur to people is that uh, one, they may not realize that there is more of a root cause, right? So a lot of
Mm,
times there is a financial issue of, hey, I need my rent paid, then the first response is, oh, well, then you obviously need financial counseling and somebody to walk alongside you in that way. Which, yes, but you have no idea if there's going to be other issues at play. If someone has an addiction issue that's due to trauma, if they have medical expenses and medical issues that are going on. So asking the right questions in the right way, I think, is also really important to get into how to find out what those root issues are.
Yeah, so you and I have talked about this quite a bit. I know that Jesus said, clothe the naked, feed the hungry. And so I guess when I think about this, there's so many people that might be watching even at a later date that goes, well, that's what Jesus said. And what you're telling us is not to do that. So you're wrong.
Uh,
What would you say to somebody that would be like, this is really difficult to listen to over the last 10 minutes of us having a conversation?
I would say to continue to listen, because absolutely we want to be in a place where we are helping people, but we're helping them in the right way, and that we have our heart and our head, and that we're working together in those ways. So there's definitely going to be instances that are one-time events, right? You're going to see someone who's at McDonald's who's asking for money, and if you go through the drive-through and are able to give them a meal, you're probably never going to see that person again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so you're not able to really build a person again, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so you're not able to really build a relationship with them, talk with them, find out what their story is, and then build on that going forward. That is just going to be a space of, they need food at this moment, I'm able to provide that to them. We're really, I think what we're getting at in an individual space, and definitely at like the church and the corporate nonprofit space, is when we do have an opportunity to build a relationship with folks, and invite them into the conversation, that if they are willing to walk with us, that we are walking alongside of them and with them
yeah.
in the process to get help.
But I think that might be the real rub there, right? And I think, and I'm speaking from experience on this. I don't have the years of nonprofit experience, but I have the years of when I was a sophomore in high school, we were homeless and
Mm,
we were sleeping in hotels and packing our stuff up in a van, and we didn't know where we'd be sleeping the next night. And so I know what it's like to feel that and understand that oftentimes people give things out of pity,
yeah.
but it's also this simple fact of there's a level of helping us where we actually need help requires relationship, and it's
Mhm.
messy,
Mhm.
and you deal with everybody's dysfunction, and um honestly, when you work through that sort of pain and that sort of dysfunction, you as a Jesus follower, as a Christian that's been at a church, like, really just giving people food sounds way easier and way better to deal with than actually dealing with the problem. And so we just don't do it. We'll do the one-off things, but we don't actually want to help you. You actually need to go get help. The problem is, where else do we get help from if not the church, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What would you say to Christians that deep down the heart issue is, I don't want to get that messy with people?
Um, I would say that when I think of poverty and poverty alleviation and what we're talking about today, that I really think about it from a gospel oriented approach. And at the root of that, it's saying that when we look at other people, we don't think of them as less than.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to wrap your head around, because there are a lot of people, again, that have really compassionate hearts that say, oh, this person on the street corner just needs our help, and I'm going to give them a thing, they can get food. The But the underlying piece there of being, they need me, I'm going to come in and save them. They are, maybe even from a subconscious level, but they are less than, and they need me in this space. So
Mm,
it's a
mhm.
white knight type of a mentality,
Yeah.
instead of, this is a person that may be broken in an area where I'm not broken, but we're all broken. the Bible says that we've all fallen short of the glory of God, that we're all broken just in different ways. And so being able to meet people in a space of I'm broken and you're broken too, and maybe you're broken in a different way, but hey, let's walk alongside each other in this. And that God has given each person unique value and abilities, and really digging into what those things are in order to walk with them. So it gets really messy. And so talking to folks, I think it's a mindset shift that's difficult, that's taken me quite a bit of time to be like, oh, wait, no, like I just care about people.
Yeah.
So there's that side. You're going to meet people who absolutely just want to care for folks. And then on the other side, people who I think over time have become jaded
Hmm.
to all of the things that they see, that it's just too much of like, well, I don't know what to do and I can't do anything. And these people who need assistance in a variety of different ways, um, like they, in one way or another, they should be able to help themselves, or that there are enough resources out there that they should be able to go and look for those resources and help themselves. And in that instance, I would say that there's a perception that if someone has a material need, because there's different levels and different types of poverty, that if somebody has a material need, material poverty, that they just need money and then it will solve their issue. When,
Yeah.
like what we've talked about, there's so many underlying things that go alongside of that, and at the core of it, relationship is just so important, and so integral. um, I think what you were talking about, where you had said, I've experienced
Yeah.
being homeless and like
Yeah.
living in my van. I'm pretty convinced that experience is a good teacher of compassion in that
Yeah.
way. And those that don't have experience, that it's hard to understand some of those, where it can come from a pity place instead
Yeah.
of from a compassion and walking alongside of them space.
Well, and I look at it, my experience was unique. And so I think every person that's homeless or has some sort of need, their story is unique. You would have never known as a sophomore in high school when I was in school that I was homeless because I didn't want pity.
Yeah,
I didn't want the label. And so I made sure that when I went to school, you did not have a clue. And so I think oftentimes there are people among us that you wouldn't even know that they're going through what they're going through
yeah,
because of this fact that we do label people. And I think that generalization is a problem because it keeps us from actually seeing the people behind the labels. and obviously I wouldn't have went, nope, nobody's gonna know, real thing.
yeah.
And so what would you say to people that say, well, all this stuff that you're talking about when helping hurts, like there's two approaches to this. Is like, yes, you're right. People need to get their butts in gear and get a job and pick themselves
Mhm.
up by the bootstraps because that's what America is all about. And
Right,
then these guys are afraid of these guys, which are over here going, no, we actually need to help. We actually need to care about them, and we need to just jump hand over fist to give them whatever they need so they can get a hand up. And
right.
so often you got this social justice warrior against this Trumpism, conservatism, maybe even evangelicalism. Like
Yeah.
there's this war going on, and I won't lie, I find myself in the middle of that so often. And what would you say to both sides of that argument?
Um, oh goodness. So to those that are on the more, I would say the jaded side. That's how
Yeah,
I would describe
yeah.
what you are describing of, the Trumpism, or that piece of really looking
Uh,
at people and
yeah, I'm
saying,
not trying to lump everybody in with that group, but I do think there's this zeal of picking yourself up by your bootstraps. You don't have to be homeless if you don't want to, type of
right, and
mentality out there.
the American way of,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
so
yeah.
many things that are out there and so many things that are available for people. And again, experience passion, and that's
Yeah.
hard to explain. But if you were to sit and have a conversation with someone, it's so like have an in-depth conversation of what's your story, what's your life been like, where do you come from, and what does that
Mhm.
mean. I think there's a difference of if you don't come from a certain background, or if you haven't had those experiences, that it's really hard to
Yeah.
see the difference, because you see it as a material piece, as like, oh well, they need these material things. Like, why don't they just do these certain actions? Like, it's very logical, and on those who are experiencing material poverty, oftentimes it's very emotional. And so
Yeah.
it's a different response, because there's trauma that's involved almost all the time, of
Yeah.
different experiences that people have had. And when there's the book When Helping Hurts by Brian Fickert and Steve Corbett, um, that they talk about how when people who are in poverty all across the world, when they talk about their own poverty, they don't talk about how they don't have money. That's not something that even comes up. Other people talk about how they don't have money. They talk about how they're ashamed, how they're
Mhm.
embarrassed, how
Mhm.
they're afraid, how they don't have any power to change their situation, or they just feel hopeless.
Yeah.
So it's a very emotional piece. And I think that that is extremely important for people to understand, in order to come to a space of not being quite as jaded, to really have the conversation with that person, again, coming from a space of I'm broken, they're broken, we're broken in different ways, but let me hear them out and hear where they're coming from.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Um, so
Yeah,
that's
so oh, go
oh,
ahead.
that would be on more of the pull yourself up by the bootstrap side,
Yeah.
and then the side of, well, we should just go and help people in whatever way that we can. That piece, I would say, is absolutely admirable. But the piece I think that's missing a lot of times is how that's carried out. And that there are oftentimes lots of organizations that are doing amazing work, that have been doing things, city officials that really working with nonprofits who are doing that work, working with the city who's doing work, in particular different instances, uh, that you create a greater impact, and you're able to hear what they already know and build off of their expertise.
Yeah.
So, definitely at a church and a corporate level, I think that investigating and doing research into some of these things is extremely important.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is collaboration,
Yes.
in the purest sense of the word. I think for, somebody that's in the ministry and understands this like industry, if you will, um, we oftentimes tend to be territorial. And so
Mm,
often a lot of our leaders are saying, I'm going to build something, which is admirable as well. Like, yes, please build more good things. We love that. But in the to go, oh no, we got that covered. Oh no, we're good. We don't need your help. Oh no, we don't want to partner with you. Or from a theological level, I'm not so sure we agree on this, and this. So therefore,
mm,
we can't be associated with you. And so, in the process of that, oftentimes the people that lose are the people like me when I was a sophomore in high school.
yeah.
And so I think about that. And the funny thing is, the reason why we were homeless is because of church hurt. My
Mm,
dad was a pastor, and there was a big fight in the church, and my dad moved us in the middle of the night, and we moved to a place where we really couldn't afford to live. Not because my dad just was unwise, is because we were trying to help care for the most amount of people, and in the process hurt ourselves. And my dad got a way underpaying job with 5 kids in a location we knew no one, and it ended up on the street at one point. And so that's difficult to swallow, because we're talking about Christians following or doing this, and then it was Christians, uh, the way they operated, that put us out on the street. And so but I'm thinking back to my dad, And I think a lot of the problem for my father was that guilt and shame you were talking about, that even kept him from going to get the help he needed. And so we should have been on food stamps, but we weren't. You want to know why we weren't? Because that's not what you do. You pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you barely
Mhm.
make it through. But I mean, you got 5 stinking kids, right? So an hour is not going to feed all of us, so what would you say to someone that is maybe watching, that is going through the same thing that maybe I went through? How do you help them navigate through the guilt and the shame and the hurt pride to go get the help they actually need?
Um, oh man, that's so hard. So first, I want to share a story as well, just to piggyback off of that and then circle
Yeah.
back around. But I was talking with my brother this past week. He came to visit, and we were reminiscing over things from our childhood. And we grew up pretty poor. There's also 5 kids in our household, and
Yeah.
just really hard times. And uh, I specifically remember a time when I was in 4th grade, and there was a field trip to go to the zoo. And the field trip was paid for, but you had to pay for lunch, and lunch was
Mm.
$4.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went home and I said, "Hey, mom, can you sign this permission slip? And I just need $4 for lunch." And she said, "Baby, I'm sorry. Like, we just don't have it." So even being in 4th grade, embarrassed and so
Yeah.
ashamed, and
Yeah.
like that can start at such an early age, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you don't even know what it comes from. And I had no idea how much $4 even was, like
Yeah.
the concept of that at the time. And so I lied and I told my teacher, I said, my parents told me that I had to earn the money and I didn't earn it. And they just looked at me and kind of questioned it on their face, and they said, "You can still go." I would say that, um, going back to the piece of that we're all broken, that we all need help sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's true. And that one of, I think, the devil's schemes in everything is to try to keep people ashamed and embarrassed, and that has been since the beginning of creation, right? That
Yeah.
he tries to keep us locked in this place of guilt and of shame, so that we don't come out of that and talk to other people. There are going to be people who are jaded or who are abrupt and just not kind. That's a reality, and that's true, and that it's heartbreaking. But if you do need the help, that swallowing pride is so hard. It's one of the things that I need the help. That swallowing pride is so hard. It's one of the things that I struggle with, that I always have, but that it's worth it.
Yeah.
And that when you are able to come to a space where you can say, "I need help," because that takes a certain amount of strength as well.
Yeah.
And when someone does meet you in that space, not just with compassion and a handout and pity, because people don't want pity. uh, that's I guess more of what we're talking about in our conversation, that people aren't looking for pity, and in fact that makes them feel even more ashamed, right? Like, don't pity me, but walk alongside me, ask
Yeah.
me what I can do, and what I'm good at, and how you can help me in that space. So
That's
it's
so good.
hard, um, but it's worth it to ask for help, and then you're giving someone else the opportunity to bless you as well.
Yeah, what would you say to people, actually people that lead churches? How should they reframe how they lead, like as an organization? What could they do? Obviously they can't do everything, right? And
Yes.
the
Yeah.
church, as in its own space, has its own function. But if they're wanting to attack this from the level that you and I are talking about,
Hmm.
how should we redesign how we do benevolence, or how we do city impact sort of community service programs? What does that look
Hmm.
like?
I would say at a church level, one of the things that you learn within nonprofits, especially when nonprofits are just starting out and like incubating, is that they do tons of surveys to try to find out like what the needs of the community are if they're a community-based nonprofit organization,
Hmm.
and then addressing those needs. So, churches, I think, if they haven't done that piece of really investigating, okay, what do we want to be our core competencies that we're not able to provide for every need because they're just massive amounts and there's so many things that we can't do.
Right.
But what are the things that we want to be about? And we're going to say, I want to be about these specific things, and really honing into that, providing resources and money and everything behind that. So first, develop what your core competencies are. I would definitely encourage doing research instead of just saying, "Oh, well, this is going to be, something that everyone needs,"
Right.
but really looking into what does our community say that they need and what's
Yep.
already in our community,
Yeah.
and then how can we help within that space. So developing core competencies, and then the other is the things that aren't your core competencies, developing partnerships with other churches, with other organizations. This is another one of culture and mind shift that I don't think a lot of churches have come to just yet, because
Yeah.
especially within the church world, there's a sense of this is our church and our branding, and we want everything that we do to be about our church so that people come here and
Yeah.
they don't go to other churches. I think it was you who told me the phrase of like the floating or tide, the rising tide
Lifts all ships.
lifts all
Yeah.
ships.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer in that, and that churches should partner with other churches, partner with local organizations who are already doing great work, and asking them what their expertise is, and leaning on that.
Yeah.
Uh, so, core competencies, partnerships where partnerships are available, and partnerships really being a two-way street of they need something that you have as a core competency, you need something that they have as a core competency, and being able to tag team together in that way so that you know that organization, you have a relationship with them. And then the third is referrals.
Yeah.
So organizations that you don't necessarily know someone who's there, but it's a resource that you know of in the community and that you're able to send people to.
Yeah, that's really good. For those of you that are individuals watching, you're like, so what about me? Like, uh, this is what I want to say to you. Like, if if I didn't have you, I wouldn't have had food to eat when I was in the hotel. In fact, we had
Mhm.
no money and we prayed for food. We wanted donuts, and so we prayed for donuts. No joke. We got donuts for an entire week. Some church had a fundraiser, found out about us, and they're like, "We have all these extra Krispy Kreme." To this day, I don't eat Krispy Kreme because I ate so much Krispy Kreme then. So one, Jesus led those people to help us. Two, it's not bad to give someone someone some food when they need it. Not bad to do that. It's not bad to give someone clothes when they need it. It's not
Yeah.
bad to give somebody shelter when they need it. But if that's the only thing you're doing, I want to challenge you and say that is not enough.
Mm.
Jesus calls us to go into relationship with people and to meet them where they're at and walk with them. And that is not easy. I know it's not easy. My mother wasn't diagnosed with mental health and learning disabilities until she was in her mid 40s. I wish we would have gotten that help earlier. She wishes she got that help earlier. It would have taken somebody to actually sit down with us and actually get to know us
Mm.
and take the time to walk into our dysfunction and be Jesus in the midst of what we were going through. And that's what Jesus did for us, right? He came straight to us in the middle of our dysfunction and walked with us in it. And so that's what Jesus is calling us to.
Yeah.
And so often we stop short of that. It's not just the gospel. It's showing them the gospel through the incarnation, which is made flesh, like God made flesh, the incarnate ministry. Jesus came to earth, walked with us, God is calling us to do that with other people. And I love this story in Acts. Peter and John are, I think it's Peter and John. It might be Peter and James. They're both walking. It's Peter and John. So they're both walking in the middle of Jerusalem. There's a guy there that is crippled and is asking for money. And they're like,
Mhm.
I have no cash on me, man. But you know what I do have? I'm going to give to you. He went straight to the root problem. He said, in the name of Jesus, rise up and walk. And here's the deal. You might not be able to do the whole rise up and walk thing. That's okay. That's a miracle. It's a sign from God to show that Peter and John were who they said they were, and Jesus was who he said he was. And so I'm all about healing, and I think Jesus can still do it today. And I think he still does do it today. However, what you did see there is that they went to the heart and the root cause of the matter, and they met the man where the man needed the most healing. And so I would challenge you that Jesus is calling you to do that. And I might just say this, and Gloria, you might agree with me or not. I don't know. But you know, Jesus healed that man through those two men because they were willing to meet the need that was in front of them and not shy away from it.
Mhm.
If you're walking that close to people that need help, then maybe, just maybe, God will walk and work through you the way he needs to help those people out. And so maybe that looks like healing. Give it a shot. I don't know. What do you think, Glory?
I think one of my favorite phrases or descriptions in the Bible is when the Bible calls Christians ministers of reconciliation.
Ooh, yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when we think of poverty, again, we think of it in like money terms all the time, that's like the first thing that goes through our head. But really, I believe that poverty comes from,
I'm not an accountant, so that's not what I
yeah.
meant.
Oh, okay. Oh,
No.
money or material things.
There we go. Yeah.
Um, but I really think that it stems from broken relationships, that
Mm-hmm.
they're broken relationships with other people, broken relationships with God, so
Yeah.
a spiritually broken relationship, and then broken relationships with the political system, which
Mm,
definitely like can impact people in negative ways and put them in situations where they're really stuck. But throughout the Bible, like the whole gospel is about bringing us back to God. That in the beginning there was, Adam and this perfect world, and when Adam sinned, the first thing that he did was what was hide, and to be ashamed, right? And that God
yeah.
called him out of that shame. And so the gospel story as well, with Jesus coming, Isaiah describes that he came to set us free, set the captives free, and
Yeah.
to take off the yoke of oppression, and to do that by caring for those who are in the most need. So we're called to do the same thing. We're called to ask people to come out of their shame, and to be like Christ in the most literal form, and be ministers of reconciliation, but not from a place of here, I'm here to save you, but from a place of uh, different than God in that way, because to save us, but come from a space of God saved me,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
am so broken and have been broken in all. How can I walk alongside of you and help you in the same direction and still go towards the God who loves us so much, and who is there in this space with us.
So good. Well, that is all the time we have for today, but we're going to talk about more controversial subjects, subjects that Christians like to ignore. I would love to do this more often, and who knows, you might see Glory back on the podcast. So, or the live event. We're on like two or three different platforms right now. So, man, it was so awesome to have you here, Glory, and I can't wait to see what this new way of serving people looks like on a practical level. And I know you're leading that charge. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, not a problem, guys. We will see you soon. Can't wait to be back here with you